Joseph Stalin speaks after the Nazi invasion. Comrades, citizens, brothers and sisters, men of our army and navy, I am addressing you, my friends. The perfidious military attack on our fatherland, begun on June 22nd by Hitler's Germany, is continuing. In spite of heroic resistance of the Red Army, and although the enemy's finest divisions and finest Air Force units have already been smashed and have met their doom on the field of battle, the enemy continues to push forward, hurling fresh forces into the attack. Hitler's troops have succeeded in capturing Lithuania, a considerable part of Latvia, and the western part of Byelorussia, and a part of the western Ukraine. The fascist Air Force is extending the range of operations of its bombers and is bombing Murmansk, Orshka, Mogilev, Smolensk, Kiev, Odessa, and Sevastopol. A grave danger hangs over our country. How could it have happened that our glorious Red Army surrendered a number of our cities and districts to the fascist armies? Is it really true that German fascist troops are invincible, as is ceaselessly trumpeted by boastful fascist propagandists? Of course not. History shows that there are no invincible armies, and never have been. Napoleon's army was considered invincible, but it was beaten successively by Russian, English, and German armies. Kaiser Wilhelm's German army, in the period of the First Imperialist War, was also considered invincible, but it was beaten several times by Russian and Anglo-French forces, and was finally smashed by Anglo-French forces. The same must be said of Hitler's German fascist army today. This army has not yet met with serious resistance on the continent of Europe. Only on our territory has it met serious resistance, and if, as a result of this resistance, the finest divisions of Hitler's German fascist army have been defeated by our Red Army, it means that this army, too, can be smashed, and will be smashed, as were the armies of Napoleon and Wilhelm. As to part of our territory having nevertheless been seized by German fascist troops, this is chiefly due to the fact that the war of fascist Germany on the USSR began under conditions favorable to the German forces and unfavorable for Soviet forces. The fact of the matter is that troops of Germany, as a country of war, were already fully mobilized, and 170 divisions hurled by Germany against the USSR, brought up to the Soviet frontier, were in a state of complete readiness, only awaiting the signal to move to action, whereas Soviet troops had little time to effect mobilization and move up to the frontiers. Of no little importance in this respect is the fact that fascist Germany suddenly and treacherously violated the non-aggression pact she concluded in 1939 with USSR, disregarding the fact that she would be regarded as an aggressor by the whole world. Naturally, our peace-loving country, not wishing to take the initiative of breaking the pact, could not resort to perfidy. It may be asked, how could the Soviet government have consented to conclude a non-aggression pact with such a treacherous fiends as Hitler and Ribbentrop? Was not this an error on the part of the Soviet government? Of course not. Non-aggression pacts are pacts of peace between two states. It was such a pact that Germany proposed to us in 1939. Could the Soviet government have declined such a proposal? I think that not a single peace-loving state could decline a peace treaty with a neighboring state, even though the latter was headed by such fiends and cannibals as Hitler and Ribbentrop. What is required to put an end to the danger hovering over our country, and what measures must be taken to smash the enemy? Above all, it is essential that our people, the Soviet people, should understand the full immensity of the danger that threatens our country, and abandon all complacency, all heedlessness, all those moods of peaceful, constructive work which were so natural before the war, but which are fatal today, when war has fundamentally changed everything. The enemy is cruel and implacable. He is out to seize our lands, watered with our sweat, to seize our grain and soil secured by our labor. He is out to restore the rule of landlords, to restore Tsarism, to destroy national culture and the national state existence of Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Lithuanians, Lets, Estonians, Uzbeks, Tartars, Moldavians, Georgians, Armenians, Azerbaijanians, and the other free peoples of the Soviet Union, to Germanize them, to convert them into slaves of German princes and barons. Thus the issue is one of life or death for the Soviet state, for the peoples of the USSR. The issue is whether peoples of the Soviet Union shall remain free or fall into slavery. The Soviet people must realize this and abandon all heedlessness. They must mobilize themselves and reorganize all their work on new, wartime lines, when there can be no mercy to the enemy. Further, there must be no room in our ranks for whimperers and cowards, for panic-mongers and deserters. Our people must know no fear in the fight, and must selflessly join our patriotic war of liberation, our war against the fascist enslavers. The people of the Soviet Union must rise against the enemy and defend their rights and their land. The Red Army, Red Navy, and all citizens of the Soviet Union must defend every inch of Soviet soil, must fight to the last drop of blood for our towns and villages, must display the daring initiative and intelligence that are inherent in our people. We must organize all-round assistance to the Red Army, ensure powerful reinforcements for its ranks and supply of everything it requires. We must organize rapid transport of troops and military freight and extensive aid to the wounded. We must strengthen the Red Army's rear, subordinating all our work to this cause. All our industries must be got to work with greater intensity to produce more rifles, machine guns, artillery, bullets, shells, airplanes. We must organize the guarding of factories, power stations, telephonic and telegraphic communications, and raise effective air raid precautions in all localities. We must wage a ruthless fight against all disorganizers of the rear. Deserters, panic-mongers, rumor-mongers, exterminate spies, diversionists, enemy parachutists, rendering rapid aid in all this to our destroyer battalions. We must bear in mind that this enemy is crafty, unscrupulous, experienced in deception and dissemination of false rumors. We must reckon with all this and not fall victim to provocation. All who, by their panic-mongering and cowardice, hinder the work of defense, no matter who they are, must be immediately hauled before a military tribunal. In the case of a forced retreat of Red Army units, all rolling stock must be evacuated. To the enemy must not be left a single engine, a single railway car, not a single pound of grain or a gallon of fuel. Collective farmers must drive off all their cattle and turn over their grain to the safekeeping of state authorities for transportation to the rear. All valuable property, including non-ferrous metals, grain, and fuel which cannot be withdrawn, must without fail be destroyed. In areas occupied by the enemy, guerrilla units, mounted and foot, must be formed. Divisionist groups must be organized to combat enemy troops, to foment guerrilla warfare everywhere, to blow up bridges, roads, damage telephones and telegraph lines, and to set fire to forests, stores, and transports. In occupied regions, conditions must be made unbearable for the enemy and all his accomplices. They must be hounded and annihilated at every step, and all their measures frustrated. Comrades, our forces are numberless. The overweening enemy will soon learn this to his cost. Side by side with the Red Army and Navy, thousands of workers, collective farmers, and intellectuals are rising to fight the enemy aggressor. The masses of our people will rise up in millions. The working people of Moscow and Leningrad already have commenced to form vast popular levies in support of the Red Army. Such popular levies must be raised in every city which is in danger of an enemy invasion. All working people must be roused to defend our freedom, our honor, our country, in our patriotic war against German fascism. All our forces for the support of our heroic Red Army and our glorious Red Navy. All the forces of the people for the demolition of the enemy. Forward to our victory.